Alrighty, so for today, we're going to be going through a full raid together, and I'll be explaining my logic and thought process behind the choices that I make, how I move around the map, and how I handle situations that are thrown at me. Something that I'm seeing hinder all of the budding wizard masters is confusion on how best to fight the monsters in the dungeon efficiently. The best way to approach fighting mobs as a wizard is to just fire magic missiles from a close to mid-range and always aim for the head. While this is the most efficient way to clear mobs, we also need to be conservative with our resources to not be left at a disadvantage if players appear, especially with the new hotfix reducing some of our spell charges. I prefer to bring a melee weapon such as a crystal sword, or I could use one of the other options and apply ignite to utilize on clearing packs of melee mobs while reserving magic missile for times of need, or versus mobs that have range or high damage. Eventually you'll learn the timings of your melee and the mobs hits to maximize getting hits in during their downtime. But to be safe, what I would recommend starting with is 1. Walk towards the enemy mob to get into their melee range, don't cast or swing anything. 2. Once they stop moving and begin their attack animation, backpedal outside of their range. And 3. Once their swing is done, step forward and headshot with them with your weapon, and then return to step 1 until they're dead. Let's play a game as we go through this raid together. I'm going to ask you randomly later on how many players are left in the lobby, ignoring if they took portals or not, and let's see if you get it right. A great way to stack up on sellables is breaking pots in rooms where they're plentiful and close in proximity to one another, like in this diagonal mummy room. We choose to head west rather than north, as the room we're heading towards often has players either actively engaging with mobs or somewhere nearby, since there is a spawn point adjacent to the room. If I'm full, I'll use a magic missile here and there for expediency, and once I get to around 2 to 3 charges, I start conserving it and opt for melee while meditation's on cooldown. With the wizard changes, it's going to be even more important to stay topped off on your spell charges, so if you're safe to do so, meditate when you can to stay in top fighting condition. It's important to be aware of our surroundings in the kill feed to help with assessing how likely we are to run into players, especially the longer the match is going on for. As a reminder, when we look around with our mouse, we physically turn our character's hitbox in-game, so we can utilize this to turn away from hits we wouldn't have avoided otherwise. We move east while moving towards the new zone to avoid having to move through the center area of the map that we can refer to as Trap Hell. Tons of dead ends, floor spike traps, wall spear traps, and one of the darker areas of the map. Best to outright just avoid it unless you're forced to move through it. As we approach, we hear sounds in the room below us, so we push past the skeleton to get some information. Seeing the shut door and the gas clouds, we can predict that they're most likely either healing up inside the room or looting, so they'll be occupied for just long enough so we can focus on the skeleton first to protect our back, and then get the protection shrine to minimize our damage taken should they put up a fight. We want to make sure that we always grab shrines as we run past them that benefit us, as they can make a massive difference throughout our run. What we're dealing with here is why it's important to start moving towards the new zone early, so that if we're met with resistance, we can handle it and not end up back in the lobby wearing our starter gear again. We hear a player nearby in the next room, so we prep and push to take the initiative. We see them portal out, but it still wasn't a waste, as it's still good practice to build a habit off of. For some reason in Dark and Darker, we can cast spells on enemies and corpses, so make sure that you aim away or just into the sky to ensure that it's cast upon ourselves. Hey, so about that game that we're playing, how many people could still be in the lobby? Well, besides us, if you said 4, or 3 if you counted the player we saw portal out, then you win. As a bonus round before we continue, go ahead and pause the video if you're confident that you can predict what the class of one of the remaining enemies will be based on the kill feed down in the comments below. If you answered Barbarian or Fighter, then you get bonus points. We know this because since we are watching the kill feed, we know there is a player that has been killing people with a Bardiche that hasn't died yet. So either they're still alive moving around, or they very recently extracted. At first thought, this may seem like a meaningless exercise, but it can help us mentally predict and prepare for the type of fights we are more likely to encounter in the final ring. As always, if you enjoyed or learned something from this video, please leave a like down below. And if you want to see me make more videos in the future like these, please consider subscribing. Cheers.